I'm Tommy D from the KnicksBlog.com. On the heels of a pretty boring NBA draft, if you are a Knicks fan, and from a Knicks standpoint, a lot of other action did take place for teams in the Eastern Conference, which we'll talk about. Joining me once again is our good friend John Wasserman from NBA Draft.net. Good to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me back.
No problem. Okay, a lot of guys in the second round were there. The Knicks decided to go in a different direction. We'll get to that in a minute in terms of the prospect. But what was the biggest surprise to you about the second round picks who didn't get drafted?
Well, there was a lot of good second round picks who went undrafted, and whether that has to do with roster flexibility or the idea that you could just add someone after the draft, you could stash a European player in Europe for a few years and then add a potential second round like a Kevin Jones who didn't go drafted, which seemed like a lock to go drafted after averaging 20 and 11. But I think guys like that, they can make a summer league team. They could be cheap source of production. You can add them later. So it's not a big deal. But I think that there was a ton of good players who didn't go drafted who will have their chance in the next few weeks to make a team and be competitive during scrimmages and Vegas play.
The Knicks are going to have to add a lot of players to their summer league team. Obviously, Shumpert being hurt, Josh Harrelson. I don't know what that team's going to look like, but it will look like probably a team with a lot of talent that didn't get drafted. Obviously, some teams that really did well. Number one, as they impact the Knicks. Number one, we talked about it right before. Philadelphia. Philadelphia was able to get in. They had 2 picks in the first round, I believe, and first one they picked a local kid from St. John's, Mo Harkless.
Right, and Mo Harkless is one of my favorite players in the draft. I think he's going to be one of those guys who say, I can't believe that someone took this guy over Mo Harkless. He went 15 overall. What they did even better was they maximized their draft position. They took another pick, and Arnett Moultrie at 27. He was a projected lottery guy. We had him as a top 10 guy for most of the year. I'm not really sure why he slipped, but for whatever reason, I think they got great value at 27. Again, Harkless at 15. I think they were probably deciding between Harkless and Moultrie at 15. Went with Harkless, and then by the mid-20s, when Moultrie didn't go, they said, wow, our guy that we could have originally taken hasn't gone yet. Let's try and make a move. They did it. They were aggressive, smart decision-making, excellent evaluation process. And Philadelphia, world-class organization in terms of decision-making on draft day.
Coming off a great year, my buddy Andrew Lantos will be happy about what you said about Harkless, but 76ers clearly making a step forward. A team that needed to rebuild and did with a couple picks in the first round that I thought were pretty good with Fab Melo and Jared Sullinger, who's a steal, Boston Celtics. So the teams in the division through the draft got better yesterday.
Well, Boston, I think the red flags were a blessing in disguise for both Boston and Jared Sullinger.
Agreed.
I don't think I think Sullinger should have gone higher. The red flags made him slip a little bit. I think Boston was happy about that, and it's going to be a great fit for him. Doc Rivers, a world-class coach. He's going to maximize his abilities. One of the rare college kids who can come in right away and be an offensive post presence, produce at the high and low post. Really talented player. His limitations and concerns were athletically, but measurement-wise, I think he had a 7'2" plus wingspan, 6'9" with sneakers on. He's a legitimate power forward in this league, and he should be a force to be reckoned with inside for Boston.
The biggest thing for me this year is winning the division, and the Knicks are behind the 8 ball. I'm not going to say that those moves are going to put Boston and Philadelphia ahead of the Knicks because you still have to play the games, but definitely helped. Another team, you know, if the Knicks are trying to get into the top 4 or that 4 or 5 position, Atlanta had a wonderful draft with a kid who I like out of Virginia, Scott, and one of my favorite players in the draft is John Jenkins.
Well, John Jenkins is clearly the top 3-point shooter in the class, and not only has he done it last year at 42+%, he's done it for about 3 consecutive years. I think he led the SEC in scoring 2 consecutive years. I really compare him to J.J. Redick. I think he's a really similar player with that quick release. They're both 6'4". Redick had a wingspan that was 3 inches less than John Jenkins. I think that's going to help with Jenkins in terms of getting a shot off.
Sure. And
then Mike Scott from Virginia, ACC. He sat out most of his regular senior year with an ankle injury, came back for the 5th senior year, averaged 18 and 8, was a constant in that offense. Really physical player, had a mid-range game that was similar to Udonis Haslem. So consistent production from both guys, and I think they'll both crack that rotation.
A great pick-and-pop player for them. Really gives them a good dimension because Josh Smith obviously can't shoot. Let's get into the Knicks pick. I'm not going to try to pretend to pronounce his name because I'll stumble. I'll let you do it. I'm going to call him Big Papa from now on.
I'm going to call him Big Papa from now on too, but his real name is Kostas Papanikolaou.
Okay.
and he played at Olympiakos from Greece. That is the class of the International League. They won the European Final Four, and he was a big part of that team. Olympiakos is generally known for not playing their younger players. They don't generally have the patience to develop those young kids, but he is an exception to the rule. He's a phenomenal role player. That was his role on this team. He really had a coming out party at the end of the year in their Final Four in the championship game. He went 5 for 5 from downtown for 18 points. What I like in terms of a fit for the Knicks is that he doesn't put the ball on the floor. He's more of a guy who fits in, again, a complimentary guy, doesn't require the ball, can knock down shots, 6'8", good versatility, can defend multiple positions, and again, we'll stash him for a year. He'll become an asset. All the top teams, all the mature teams like San Antonio have done this, and it's hard to question Glenn Grunwald's decision-making and evaluating after last year taking Novak for pennies and Jeremy Lin for pennies and thinking out of the box with free agency with Tyson Chandler.
My only issue with Grunwald is he said at that point didn't seem like there was any good rotation players. Darius Johnson owned him as a rotation player in the NBA.
Yeah, well, again, I guess they didn't feel that he would be able to contribute right away, and that's what we're looking for, especially with Shumpert's injury, who's going to be out till January. So I guess if you didn't think that he was going to contribute right away, you know, I understand he is a bit of a tweener. Me and you disagree with the fact that tweener should factor in to your draft decision. He's going to be a nice player for the Lakers. I like that acquisition. But listen, this is a second-round pick. This is number 48. This is not a guy who's going to change our rotation, change the game for us. We could still get some nice players, undrafted guys. Wesley Matthews was an undrafted guy and has a nice career. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think any guy at this 48 spot would have made or break our rotation in our season next season.
Great stuff. We enjoyed having you, and I look forward to doing stuff with you in the future. Keep up the great work.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks, John. And remember to get all your information on the Knicks. Check out theknicksblog.com, part of the SNY.TV blog network. We'll be talking bird rights soon, and then we'll get into Summer League at some point in the near future. See you next time.